welcome to our YouTube channel. This is for Dole with Wishes and Castle Dreams. So far on our channel, we've had a couple of segments. One is our Treats and Eats section where we do copycat video recipes for different recipes from Disney that you can make at home. And then we also have our Magical Home Mints section where we do some crafts and stuff like that where you can bring the magic of Disney home with you. So when you can't be at the park, those are great videos to watch. And today we're going to start a new segment called Tips and Tricks. And this segment will be all about just when you're going to the park, or if you're planning to go to either Disneyland or Disney World, we'll be giving you some great advice from those of us who have been there a number of times, what to do, what not to do. And so for this first segment, I just want to do something really fun, one of the main staples of the parks, and that is your character interaction, the meet and greets, the Disney dining with the characters. It's just kind of one of the things that only the parks and the resorts have that you can't get anywhere else. And so we're going to talk about that today and how to best get ready for that and what to do to make the most of those interactions. Okay, so first, we're going to talk about preparing to go to a character interaction, meet and greet, whatever you want to call it. There are a number of places where you can meet the characters, but I think some people, their first visit there, they make the mistake of just winging it. Like, I'm just going to show up and, thinking Mickey's just going to walk by and you're going to be able to stop and interact with them. That doesn't really happen. They have specific places in the park and at some of the restaurants and some of the resorts where you can go and meet them. So you have to check ahead of time before you go, figure out who you want to see, and then you can go to the website. You can ask us. We love to talk about that, just where you can go to meet the specific characters. And they also have the two different types of meet and greet. Like I mentioned, the restaurants where you can go and you eat, and typically they come to your table and you can get your pictures and your autographs, or they have spots where you go specifically just to see them. Another thing to keep in mind that a lot of people don't realize, especially if it's their first time or maybe they've never really done a character interaction before, is that there's always a line. Well, I shouldn't say always, but almost always a line, and it's usually pretty long. So you're going to want to prepare for that, especially if you have small children. That can be pretty daunting for them to wait in that huge line. So just be ready, maybe have some little activities for them to do, coloring books, something that they can do while they're waiting in line, because it can get pretty long. So just make sure you're prepared for that. The other thing that I want to mention is, because it happened to me, like I've been meeting the characters for, gosh, so many years. But then I started to take my kids. And I remember the first time we went to Chef Mickey's, and I had talked about it with my kids beforehand, just to let them know, what's going to happen and how it's going to go, which I highly recommend, because I've seen far too many families show up and the kids just freak out. And no one really wants to see that. No one really wants to go through that. So be sure to talk with your kids before you go and let them know, they're going to come up and you can give them a hug or you can give them a high five. And we're going to take pictures, or you can get their autograph. Just discuss, what's going to happen. And then, so the first time we went to Chef Mickey's, my boys were, I think 2.5, 3, around there. And we had discussed it beforehand, but when we got there, first of all, the reservation was really early in the morning, and we were, a couple hours behind in our time zone. So we were a little, that was really early for us. And then it was their first time, and so they were just really nervous. And I had one son that just refused to take a picture with, Mickey. I'm like, it's Mickey, how can you not want to? But he was grumpy and he just refused. And so, it was, I didn't know what to do, because I had spent, it costs a pretty penny to go to Chef Mickey's, and I'm like, what's going to happen? And so I came up with I figured out this little tip, and I'm going to pass it on to you now. It came about by accident, or not by accident, but it came about, like, it wasn't my planning, but it was their birthday, so they brought out, near the end of the time, a cupcake for them, and I know it's breakfast, but my son got that and his whole attitude changed. He was just the happiest boy. It just made his day. And so my tip for you is have something to motivate them. Some people might call it bribery. I like to call it motivation. Just something to have, that will bring your child's mood up, or that you can use to maybe entice them to get a picture. And that may sound bad, but these pictures, like my kids love looking back at them. Sometimes they hate taking the pictures, but they always love looking at them later on. And it's something I love too. So like just capturing those moments, like sometimes you got to give them a cupcake to get that good picture. So think about that beforehand. Is there something I can do that will help motivate them in case they're maybe a little shy, or if they're not feeling in the best mood, because sometimes that can happen even at the happiest place on earth. We can have some bad attitudes. So think about that before you go, and again, just explain to them what's going to happen. And as my kids have gotten older, that's changed, because now cupcakes just don't cut it, though they always will for me in my heart. If you need to change my attitude, tacos and cupcakes, but that's a side note. So what I've learned now is, as they've gotten older, I tell them, how you get souvenirs to remember your trip, the fun toys and trinkets and all that stuff, that I get pictures of you with, characters or in certain spots. And that really clicked for them. They're kind of like, oh, I get it, and so it's like fair, and they understand that. And so that's another tip that you might want to use if they're a little older. You can explain that to them. But then another funny story, this year I was finally able, after all my years, to get a reservation at Cinderella's royal table. And I have 2 boys, and they are very much boys, like just will resist anything girl on principle alone. Like, I don't know how that happened, because I didn't raise them that way. Like, they have always been that way. And so I was a little nervous about it because it's a princess meet and greet. And so again, we talked about it beforehand, and they were just not having it. But I'm like, I want to go. I've never been. We do a lot of stuff that you want to do, so this is going to be something, for that I want to do, that compromise thing. But my one son was still like, not totally on board. And so I knew what would get him. We went during Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party, which typically we don't recommend you doing a character dining or a long dining during a party like that, because you're paying extra and you don't really want to spend most of your time sitting at a restaurant. But for me, it was worth it because I'd never been, and we had been to the Not So Scary Halloween parties before, so that wasn't, we knew we were missing out a lot on that. So it was during that time, and I told my son, okay, if you go, good attitude, you can wear your stormtrooper costume. So here he is at Cinderella's royal table in his stormtrooper costume. And yeah, that was our compromise. And then, of course, the picture with Cinderella, they were not about that either. But I told them, if we get one good one with Cinderella, then you don't have to take any with the rest of the princesses. You could just take pictures of me with them, because I wanted to meet them. So, and that was our other compromise. So just really think about, do your research, find out what's going to happen, where you need to go, what you need to do beforehand so you're ready. Talk to your kids about it, and just really prepare. Like, if you know that they're going to be resistant to something, but it's really important to you, like I said, those pictures, man, we just look back on them, and they're just some of the best things ever. And especially when we're saving up for a trip and we can't maybe go out to eat, as much. And so we'll say, we got to save up for a trip. Let's look through the pictures instead. So we'll do dinner and look through pictures. It's just such a great thing to have. And so for me and my family, I think it's worth it. So you need to decide for you and yours if it's worth the long lines and the extra motivation you might need, just whatever. So really think about that. Do your homework. And then above all, you as a parent need to manage your expectations. We expect them to run into Mickey's arms, you know, and hug them and do cute things, but that doesn't always happen. Like I said, I can't tell you how many meltdowns I've seen that I've had my own kids refuse to hug or high five or anything, interact at all with the characters. So just manage your expectations too. If not getting that perfect picture is going to make you upset to the point where you can't enjoy things, then maybe just wait until they're older, or maybe a trip that you can have by yourself, or else, you know, find some motivation that you know is going to work, because you don't want it to ruin your whole. I mean, I've seen people, it ruins their whole time there because they're, you know, they didn't get that perfect picture. So really manage your expectations. So now that we've got all those good tips out of the way, I wanted to talk about the actual character interaction. This is another kind of misconception I think people have, is that especially when the lines are really long, you feel like people are taking forever. But once you get up with those characters, it moves so quick. You are flying through there. They want your book, your autograph book open to the page you want them to sign. They want your pen ready to go. They just, you know, they want you in and out, and it moves really quick. Especially if you're not like prepared. Like if you're just like, I don't know what to do once I get up there. Like you ask for your signature, their signature, you ask for the picture, and then they just kind of, you know, you don't really know what else to do, so they move you out the door. But there are some questions that you can ask that can kind of prolong, and they will give you a little extra time if you're interacting with the characters. So I just want to talk a little bit about some of those things that you can do to kind of prolong the experience, especially if you can get it on video, which is really awesome. It just makes it so cool. So you're going to want to stick to mostly yes or no questions if they've got like a head, like Mickey or Minnie, Pluto, Donald, you know, all the characters with the heads. If they're like princesses, then you don't have to necessarily stick to the yes or no answers. But for those characters, you do. They are able to do some motions, like hand motions. So if it's something easy for them to mime to you, you can ask them that. Like a lot of times we'll ask Pluto where Mickey is, like especially at Chef Mickey's, he'll be like, he's in the kitchen, you know, like preparing food. Like, I don't know, he somehow manages to tell us in hand signals, or paw signals, I guess it would be. So it's really cute. But here's some other questions that I thought were pretty fun that you can ask some of the different characters. Some of my favorite character interactions, I think most of my favorite character interactions, happen with Chip and Dale, which is really weird because, like, they're, you know, not like, they're not Mickey. Like, so you'd think like Mickey would be the big one, but actually Chip and Dale are super fun to interact with. And so I always like to ask, which one are you, Chip or Dale? Are you Chip? Well, you have to ask them yes or no. Are you Chip or are you Dale? But then ask them, how do you tell the difference? And they are able to tell you, and it's really cute, and I love interacting with them. You can ask them, you know, which one's which one's better, you or Chip? You can ask them just like, especially those rivalry questions are usually pretty cute. How about with Donald? You can ask him why he doesn't have pants. Like, that's just funny, just to see what he does, and it's really cute. You can ask Snow White who her favorite dwarf is. That's always fun. You can ask Belle if she's read any good books lately, or if she can recommend a good book. That's always a good one. You can ask Prince Charming what his first name is. I don't think I know what his first name is. I haven't asked him that one, but that's on my list. So I always go with like a list of questions, just somewhere, you know, I usually keep it in my park bag. So I'm ready, you know, if we meet somebody to just look through it quick and find some questions that we can ask them. You can ask Flynn Rider what's in his satchel. That's a good one. He usually comes up with some pretty great stuff. And you can ask Tiana what's cooking. You know, she loves to cook, so you can ask her, or if she's got any favorite recipes she'd like to share. You can ask Princess Aurora if she likes to take naps. That one's pretty cute, especially if you've got a little girl. It's just so precious. You can ask Eeyore where his tail is. You can ask Cinderella's sisters to sing, one of her stepsisters. Oh, that's a treat. That's hilarious. If you can get that on video, that's awesome. And one I haven't tried, but I've seen a few people recommend, is to ask, if you can find her, ask Mary Poppins how to say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious backwards. So I haven't tried that one yet, but I want to when I meet her. If you get a chance to meet Tigger and you've got little kids, a fun one to ask is to give bouncing lessons. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. You get that on video with your little kids, and Tigger teaching them how to bounce. You can ask Stitch to do an Elvis impression. Another one that's kind of sentimental is you can tell Mickey that you miss Walt and ask him if he does too, and if, of course, he's going to say yes, and if he does, you can ask him if a hug would make him feel better. That would be very precious. I think if my children did that, I'd buy them a pony. You can ask Jasmine what Raj's favorite treats are. That would be fun. You can ask Merida for archery lessons. She might do that. That would be kind of cool to do, especially with the little girl. Oh, that would be so cute. And you could also ask Aladdin for a carpet ride and just see what he says. Like, that would just be pretty fun. So those are some of my suggestions for what to say to the characters. You can think of your own. That would be a great thing when you're preparing to go and your kids are excited. Well, let's talk about what we can ask if we meet, Mickey, or if we meet Minnie. Just come up with some of your own questions. It does help you prolong that experience a little bit more, and you can get it on video, and it's just some of our most treasured memories, I think, and those interactions that just make it extra special. The last thing I want to talk about is the character dining that I've mentioned a couple of times. Most of those places are really hard to get reservations for, so you definitely have to do it ahead of time to make sure you get those slots. So check if you're using a travel agent. A lot of times they can book those for you. If you're doing it yourself, just make sure as soon as you can do those that you're doing it, because they will fill up so fast. There are sometimes last minute reservations that open up. So if you're, like kind of, I'm okay if we do, I'm okay if we don't, like you can try and wait till the last minute and see. But we were just at Ohana's. Ohana's is another hard one, having breakfast with Lilo and Stitch. We just did that this last year, and I saw this guy had a party of like 12. They were staying at the resort, and they walked up and they're like, we want a table. And of course they're like, do you have reservations? He's like, no. And they're like, well, we're so booked up, it's just not going to be possible. And he legit flew into a rage. Like, I've never seen anything like it. It was crazy. But that's what, people come and they think they can just do this last minute, and you can't, especially with large parties. Those are really hard to do. A lot of times, if you don't mind splitting your party, it's easier to do reservations that way in like 2 groups. But it was crazy. And you don't be that guy. Don't show up and expect a table last minute, because it usually doesn't happen. So those are my tips for character interactions. I hope you found them helpful. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them below. I hope you would also hit subscribe to our channel. We've got great stuff on here. Like I said, check out some of our other videos. Our treats and eats have all those yummy recipes, and our magical home mints have all those great things you can do at home to bring Disney home with you. So hit subscribe, hit like, tap that bell, just whatever. Show us some love. We love to hear from you. All right? Thanks.